Hello and welcome to the Summer School and YouTube channel. My name is Nico. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hello and welcome to the podcast. If you like this video and the content I provide, what content is that, you may be asking? Well, anything about schools and education, and sometimes things that aren't about schools and education. If you like that stuff, like the video, subscribe to the channel. All the engagement goes a long way. I bring guaranteed content every Friday. Sometimes some stuff earlier in the week if the idea strikes me. But for today, we're going to get right into the topic of this video. This is a part 2. So for context for this, I suggest that you go and watch part 1, where I talk about being a male teacher in elementary schools. I also suggest that you should go and listen to my conversation with Charles Love, because that guy is awesome. And in that conversation, we talked about race and representation and the value of representation. It was the part where we talked about avocados. Go ahead, find that timestamp and go and listen to it. It's pretty good. So in the last video, I talked about representation and my thoughts on it using, I guess, from the perspective of me being a male. I'm going to talk about my views on representation in this video as, well, from my perspective of my race, cis. My race is, because I'm half black and half Filipino. And right off the bat, I know that there's people seeing the title of this video and they're like, oh, this guy's just going to complain about not working with people that look like him. And again, watch the first video. That is not the case. In fact, you might like what you're going to hear in this video. You might not. I don't know, but don't jump to the conclusion, because I already feel that it's unfortunate that I have to list out my ethnicity in order to preface my argument and my analysis. But we live in a world where that's very, very valuable to do, and I get it to a certain extent. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I think that we place too much value in racial representation in the eyes of children. I understand that it's nice to have diversity, but it is not the end-all, be-all of inspiration for kids. So, this topic came about because I had a conversation with this man who I really respect. I'm going to call him Hank. Hank is a black man from the Midwest, long tenure working as a teacher and a principal, and now he's on the school board. And he runs this nonprofit where he takes black and brown kids from the inner city and shows them to fields where they can see, potential to make money or potential to just find fulfillment. And that idea in itself, not bad at all. I think it's very awesome what he's doing. And in fact, I totally thought that was great when he shared it with me. The part that I had reservations on was when he told me this, that he does this for these kids. And then he said, yeah, I like to show these kids to these fields and to these industries because they don't have role models. They don't see that. So to see a person that looks like them in these positions of success, that's it spurs the kid to push and move along, and it shows them that it's possible. And I push back to this because I don't feel that the emphasis should be on the person looking like them. I think that what captivates and inspires an individual should be the craft that they are seeing. They don't fall in love with who's working there. They fall in love with what's being worked on. And I told him this through I said, well, what about Jackie Robinson? And I said, you're talking about representation and being something valuable. That man had no representation to look at in terms of our modern definition of representation. Sure, he had players in the Negro Leagues that inspired him, and I think that wasn't what motivated him. I think that Jackie Robinson fell in love with the game of baseball. He loved the game, not the players. When he saw the game of baseball, he fell in love and he said to himself, I'm going to be the best player that I can be. I'm going to be the best at this game that my body can allow. And I love it so much that I don't care what it's going to take me through to go through this game. And he was going through and breaking into a field where mean comments were the least of his concerns. I think the beauty in Jackie Robinson's career is that he made an oath to himself, like, I love this game so much, I'm going to develop my skills, and my skills are going to be so developed that they will make me undeniable. And I shared this with Hank, and I said, isn't that a better catalyst to spur a career rather than I want to go into this field so that people who look like me can see me and be like, hey, that person looks like me and I can be them. I would rather go with the former, because the person who loves the craft that they're doing, whether it's basketball, engineering, being an economics professor, anything that they do, if they attack it with a single-minded love, a single-minded mentality of just, I am focusing all my being into being great at this, that person's going to persevere through a lot more than the person who's just out to kind of just be to be some sort of political icon, political symbol of, you see me in this field, therefore now you can see that it's possible to be in this field. I don't like that mindset, because to me it's very short-sighted. And when I shared this with Hank, he said, oh, well, that Jackie Robinson's an exception to the rule. And I just had an inner sigh, because when I hear someone say that something's an exception to the rule, I hear them say, I don't want to believe the possibility. And let's say, I'll give a steel man of their arguments. They'll say, Nico, cultivating a healthy amount of individual sovereignty is important. But to have children focus on that and not focus on the real enemy, white supremacy, it's naive. By the time these kids leave school, they will be shell-shocked by the racist systems of this country. And all the self-love in the world won't prepare them for that. And if that's the argument being put forth, I gotta say I still disagree, because why would you want to develop a sense of hopelessness in children? I wouldn't you rather have them tap into the wellspring of hope that is in their own hearts? I mean, if they're living in circumstances that aren't ideal, that wellspring is still there. If you move their focus away from that and have them focus on the aspects of society that you disagree with, you're putting your negative views and negative bias of the world on the kids. And these people might say, we're not being negative, we're being realistic. Are you? If this racist world and racist system is so debilitating, why are the majority of blacks not living in poverty? Why are the majority of blacks not committing crimes? And this is my problem with the representation discussion. It only gets brought up in white and black relations. And my disagreement with the people that push representation as this high and mighty value that needs to be sought after, they usually have a very two-dimensional view on race. And it's sad, because they are so intoxicated by the prospect of being on the right side of history that they don't want to take the time to assess the validity of a lot of their statements and a lot of their motives because to do that would be to allow racism and white supremacy more time to be a terrifying force. And I never could understand focusing on race and teaching race to kids in this kind of like omnipotent boogeyman that's always waiting around the corner. There's no benefit in doing that with children. And I will say, I'll close this story because that's representation, and talking about representation with a school board member. When you're in schools, even as a teacher, you're going to get it from parents too. A lot of people think that, with the CRT and the anti-CRT, that it's the administration and the district that's pushing all this propaganda into the schools. That's kind of true, but don't lead away from what parents are also bringing into the room too. And I've had that happen to me where I had a mom teaching an art class in my classroom, and it wasn't a district assigned site or a district assigned class. She came in to teach with other parents to just have kids practice art. It was awesome. They taught some amazing stuff. And for this 1 week, she wanted to teach about a civil rights painter. And she said, could I also talk about things about that time frame in history? And I said, okay, sure. I got all this other stuff to juggle. I don't want to read through your lesson plan. That I don't have time for that. And when the lesson actually happened, she showed this picture of this beautiful painting of these black girls jumping rope, and I think it was in front of a painting of Mona Lisa. I don't remember the exact thing, the exact painting in the painting. But she shows this to the kids, and then she says, do you know, kids, why she painted this? And what's the symbol of this painting? She painted this because she didn't see herself represented in the art. And all the famous artists of the time were white men. And she wanted to see herself represented. And I'm sitting at my desk like, no, that's not, don't do that. That's not true. And the kids see me shaking my head, and I let her go and teach her whole lesson. I understand I should have really pressed, and I could have asked her step by step what she's going to teach. Fair play. I'll admit to that. But I pulled the kids around in a circle, and I told them at the end of the lesson, after it all closed, I said, raise your hand if you like Harry Potter. And all the kids raised their hand. And then I said, okay, how many of you look like Harry Potter? And the kids laughed because they're predominantly Asian. I got predominantly Asian. I had some Latino students, a few white students, and they all laughed. And then I said, I grew up loving Bruce Lee. My dad, my black father, pushed Bruce Lee on me from a young age, and I love Bruce Lee. Do I look anything like Bruce Lee? And they laughed again. They're like, no. And I'm like, I also love Pokemon. I loved Ash Ketchum. I wanted to be a Pokemon trainer. Do I look anything like a 10-year-old Japanese boy? And they laughed again. And I said, look, my point is this. With Harry Potter, you connected to that character because they had that universal desire to be someone special. That's in the human DNA. You want to stand out in the world. I wanted to be Bruce Lee because he wasn't some Asian man. He was Bruce Lee. You couldn't. People try to capture who he was. They can't. Only he could be it. And I loved Pokemon because it sounds corny, but I wanted to be the very best, which is another mantra that many a human in the history of this world has felt. My point to the kids, and I told them this to end the conversation, do not limit what inspires you based on what looks like you. I got to my position, you guys love me as a teacher. I hope you don't like me just because I'm a good male teacher. I don't like that comment. I hope you like me because I'm a good teacher. My style and my approach to the classroom has been developed by primarily white women and white men. You saw the demographics in this video. I'm talking now to you, the viewer. Those are the numbers that I play with. I have no control over the demographics of this field. And I didn't listen to those white men and women just because they were white men and women, because there are a good number of white men and women that I didn't listen to because their philosophies didn't resonate with me. What inspires you should just be a matter of wisdom and connection and character, not how they appear. And I said to the kids, I'm jealous of you because you have no blinders on your existence right now. You can take in and soak in this world for all its amazing beauty and all its terrible pain and tragedy. Why would you limit your lens of this existence based on the color of your skin or what your gender or what your sex is? That seems silly. That seems silly. I don't know. I will say that a lot of people that do this and push this representation talk, I don't want to paint them as evil people. I think what they're doing is, again, misguided. And I talked to that parent who had the lesson, and I told her kind of along the lines of this conversation, and she was very receptive, and she kind of broke down because she broke down and she just said, I just want to do what's right. I want to let kids know that there's a shadow. And I said, look, you want to talk about shadows for a society, look at the ancient Aztecs. And I told this to the kids, look at the ancient Aztecs. They were pioneers for agriculture and mathematics that stood the test of time and millennia. And they also sacrificed humans and they sacrificed children. How high and mighty would I appear if I was like, well, they sacrificed kids, so they are a terrible society and we can learn nothing from them. That's a very immature way to view history. And I think that education in elementary schools are kind of taking an immature approach into these topics of race, sex, gender, and history. And it's unfortunate because when I talked to the kids about these things and I had this talk with them, they really was like, yo, that's good. And in a way kind of brought them all together because they're just focusing on, are you cool to me? Are you good with me? That's it. We're good. Or do you treat me with kindness? Do you treat me with respect? Are you silly like me? I don't care how you look. I don't care about any of that. I think a lot of adults can benefit from incorporating more of that approach in their own mind rather than grinding an axe against the country. If you're doing that, I really believe that you don't really have a substantive knowledge of world history, because in relation to all the countries in the world and all the continents in the world throughout the time span of human existence, what we're doing is par for the course. Sometimes worse, sometimes better, but welcome to the human condition, baby. That's it. You can do the best with your lot and what you bring to the people that are immediately around you, but you are not God. You cannot control people based on your own fears. It's not a good way to run the world. It's not a good way to run the world, and it's not a good way to run the classroom. It's not a good way to run teachers. And I feel like that was happening a lot, and I didn't want any part of it. So that is part 2 of the video on my views on the importance of representation, or my disagreements with its importance, but my reservations. I hope you liked the video. If you want to see more content, again, subscribe. I'll be releasing content every Friday. I got some cool interviews lined up with some pretty, at least to me, pretty big rock stars in the education world. So I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy the rest of your day, your afternoon, your weekend, whatever. Bye.